While you were worried about inflation at the grocery store, Wall Street just bought 40.8 million acres of American farmland. That's bigger than the entire state of Florida. And here's the kicker. Most Americans have no idea it's happening. I'm David McCann, a former pit trader and commercial mortgage broker, and what I'm about to show you will make you understand why your food costs keep rising and why your kids might not have food security in 20 years. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is documented fact from USDA data that nobody's talking about. Let me start with some numbers that should terrify every American. Foreign ownership alone has increased 400% since the 1970s. We're talking about going from 14 million acres to over 40 million acres. That's 3.1% of all privately held agricultural land in America, now owned by foreign entities. But here's what's even more shocking. The USDA admits its data is incomplete. These are self-reported numbers. The penalties for not reporting? Practically non-existent. So when I tell you 40.8 million acres, that's just what they're admitting to. How concentrated is the corporate ownership of U.S. farmland? Only 4% of farms now produce 48% of our food. 4 companies control 56% of global seeds. 6% of farms produce 75% of our food. 80% of beef is controlled by just 4 companies. This isn't farming anymore. This is industrial food manufacturing controlled by a handful of corporations. And here's the part that really gets me fired up. This isn't about farming profits. This is about control. When you control the land, you control the water. When you control the water, you control the food. When you control the food, you control the people. Now let me show you the scale of what's really happening. And this is where my finance background helps me see the bigger picture. The billionaire land grab. Bill Gates owns 247,000 acres, making him the largest private farmland owner in America. Jeff Bezos owns 420,000 acres, mostly Texas ranch land. Flannery Associates bought 60,000 acres through shell corporations in California. But here's what most people miss. It's not just billionaires anymore. Wall Street has discovered farmland. Real estate investment trusts are now buying farmland like it's Manhattan real estate. Here's the math that should be concerning to you. A REIT buys farmland for $4,000 per acre, leases it to a farmer for $300 per acre per year, which is a 7.5% return. Wall Street packages that income stream and sells it to investors at 20 times the annual income. So land value jumps from $4,000 to $6,000 per acre. But they aren't finished there. What if they bump up the dividend to $400? This is called financial engineering or dividend engineering. At 20 times earnings, the land is now worth $8,000. Now, if I'm not mistaken, one of the original groundbreaking researchers into dividend engineering was an Italian fella living in Montreal named Ponzi. What this means: farmers can't afford to buy land anymore. They become tenants on land their families once owned. Wall Street gets steady returns while farmers take all the risk. When Wall Street owns the land, they don't care about soil health. They want maximum short-term returns. They use single crop monocultures like corn and soy and chemical-intensive farming to maximize yield. This causes soil degradation, erosion, water depletion, and contamination. The farmer becomes a sharecropper on land that used to feed the community sustainably. Here's something that should keep you up at night. 55% of Western water rights are now held by corporations. As someone who's analyzed thousands of commercial real estate deals, I can tell you that water rights are often more valuable than the land itself, especially in the West. Here's how the water grab works. Buy farmland with senior water rights, also called riparian rights. Convert the land use, no more farming. Sell the water rights to cities or corporations. Profit while removing both land and water from food production. I've seen this playbook in commercial real estate for years. Buy the asset, extract maximum value, leave the community holding the bag. They're selling this as climate adaptation and sustainable development, but here's what they're not telling you. Removing farmland from production means importing more food, which has a higher carbon footprint. Converting agricultural land to urban development is permanent. Water rights, once sold, rarely come back to agricultural use. In California's Central Valley, I'm tracking deals where agricultural water rights are being sold to tech companies for data centers. Data centers that use millions of gallons per day while the farmland sits dry. This isn't climate action. This is resource extraction disguised as environmentalism. The foreign water grab. Saudi Arabia owns alfalfa farms in Arizona and ships the water-intensive crop back to Saudi Arabia. Chinese companies are buying water rights in Texas and California. They're literally exporting our water while we face drought conditions. We saw how Wall Street profits from the farmland, but what about the billionaires, pension funds, and large corporations? Let me break down the financial mechanics of how this works. These billionaires and corporations aren't using their own money. They're using cheap debt, investor funds, carbon credit financing, and government subsidies. Here's a real example of how the math works. Buy premium farmland for $8,000 per acre. Finance 60% with debt at 6% interest only. Your equity, $3,200 per acre. Annual lease income, $560 per acre. Annual carbon credits, $15 per acre. Total annual income, $575 per acre. Less interest-only debt, $288. Cash-on-cash return, 9% on your equity, plus 5% annual land appreciation, plus water rights value, plus development potential. Meanwhile, the actual farmer pays $560 per acre rent instead of building equity, has no control over long-term land use, competes against corporate-backed operations with deeper pockets, and eventually gets priced out entirely. Here's what really pisses me off. Their exit strategy isn't farming, it's holding until development pressure increases land value 300 to 500%, selling water rights separately, converting to solar farms or data centers, or developing into housing or commercial. Every single one of these removes the land from food production permanently. When land appreciates 5% annually on $8,000 per acre, that's $400 per acre appreciation. On your $2,400 equity investment, that's a 16.7% return from appreciation alone. Add the 9% cash flow, and you're looking at 25.7% total returns. No wonder Wall Street is piling in. Foreign-held cropland grew 182% since 2010. That's 7.5 million acres of cropland in just over a decade. At current rates, we're losing agricultural land faster than we're creating it. Meanwhile, food imports have increased 300% since 1990. The farmer becomes a sharecropper, while Wall Street extracts wealth from America's food security. So what does this mean for regular Americans? Short term, higher food prices, reduced food security, loss of rural communities. Long term, potential food shortages during crisis, complete corporate control over the food system, loss of agricultural knowledge and infrastructure. When foreign entities control our farmland and water, they control our food security. In a crisis, what happens when those countries decide to prioritize their own food needs? Your grocery bill keeps going up. Food quality decreases. Your kids inherit a food system controlled by corporations and foreign interests. Industrial farming is destroying our topsoil. We've lost 50% of our topsoil in the last 150 years. Current practices lose soil 10 to 40 times faster than it can regenerate. At current rates, we have 60 harvests left before soil depletion. This isn't just about farmers. This is about every American family's future food security. Look, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm a guy with a laptop who's pissed off about what I'm seeing in the data. But here's what you can do. Support local farmers and farmers markets. Learn about farmland ownership in your area. Contact your representatives about foreign farmland ownership. Share this information. Most people have no idea this is happening. I'm going to keep digging into this data, and exposing what's really happening. Subscribe if you want to stay informed about the corporate takeover of our food system. And if this information was valuable to you, consider buying me a coffee to support this research. Link in the description. They're counting on you not paying attention. They're counting on you being distracted by other issues while they quietly buy up the foundation of our food security. Don't let them. The data is all public. You just have to know where to look. And I'm going to keep looking. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.